Hi, everybody. Welcome to English Digest. I'm Stephanie.
I'm Tom.
It's our literature unit. It's our last day. We're going to be spending time today talking about the author, Natalie Babbitt, who wrote the novel Tuck Everlasting, and also, her background and some of the major themes of the novel.
Exactly, and this is kind of a fantasy novel because as far as we know, no one has the ability to live forever. Pretty much everybody has to die, although I think they discovered some squid species or something that can actually regenerate its cells and potentially live as long as it wants to.
Oh, well, they're trying to clone animals and people. I mean, there's all of this stuff going on. There are people out there that really want to live forever. Not me, though. I'm ready to go when it's
that's a good question.
Time to go.
Exactly right. Some people think that life is meant to be short, and that's what gives meaning to life. The fact that we're going to die makes us appreciate the moments we're alive more.
We just move on to a better life, yeah.
Exactly. Or, it depends on, your background or your religious convictions or whatever. But it's a good question. We're talking about morality or the kinds of morals you have regarding life and death, how you feel about good and bad, good and evil and stuff like that. And we're also talking about immortality in this book, Tuck Everlasting. And we did finish summarizing the book last time. Today, we're going to focus on the author herself, Natalie Babbitt, who has been gone for a number of years now, but her legacy lives on in this book, Tuck Everlasting. So let's get to it. Let's read the entire contents of today's lesson, and we'll be right back to discuss it in detail.
Natalie Babbitt was born in Ohio, U.S. As a child, she decided to become an artist after receiving an illustrated novel. She graduated from Smith College, got married, and had 3 children. After years as a homemaker, she was inspired by the 1960s feminist movement to pursue her childhood dream. She began illustrating children's books and writing fiction. She wrote Tuck Everlasting in response to her youngest child's fears about dying. A major theme of the novel is how mortality is a crucial part of the life cycle. Angus discourages Winnie from telling anyone about the spring water and longs to end his own immortality. It's the certainty of eventual death and having connections with others that make life worth living. Jessie urges Winnie to drink the spring water and thereby transform into an immortal being. This shows that he doesn't care about Winnie's welfare. He's had many years to mature and realize the harsh reality of being immortal. But he has the perspective of a selfish adolescent. Instead of being stuck in an unnatural cycle, he is stuck outside of any cycle, both mentally and physically. The vulnerable boundary between right and wrong is another important theme. First, the Tucks commit the crime of kidnapping in order to protect Winnie and impress upon her the fundamental importance of keeping their secret. Second, May kills the man in the yellow suit, which is murder. But the action is justified to protect the world from a potentially dreadful outcome. Last, Winnie knowingly helps release May from police custody because it's for the greater good. She learns important morality lessons about right and wrong by making difficult but wise decisions.
All right, now that we have the article read for today, we're going to come back and talk about the details of what we just heard and what is written in our magazines. So again, it's all about morality and immortality in the book Tuck Everlasting. So the author's name is Natalie Babbitt. She's gone now. She lived between 1932 and 2016, and she was born in the American state of Ohio, which is where Cincinnati is, where Columbus is, and Cleveland. It's straight west of Pennsylvania and east of Indiana, just in case you wanted to know. Yeah. But in any case, yes, she was born in Ohio, and as a child, she decided decided to become an artist after receiving an illustrated novel. This does happen to people when they're young. They're inspired by various things.
Yeah.
Maybe you had an uncle who was a hotshot lawyer making tons of money, so you thought, boy, I want to be just like him. Or a friend of yours could play the guitar really well, so you decided to become a rock star. Well, in this particular case, she received a novel that was illustrated, and sometimes novels are illustrated, not so much anymore, but old novels from the 1800s and the early 1900s often were illustrated, which means they had pictures in the book in various places. Not like a comic book, but just pictures like every 10 pages or so. She got an illustrated novel when she was a kid, and that inspired her, and she graduated from Smith College, which I believe is an all-women's college in Massachusetts. And then she got married and she had 3 children. And usually when you get married with a lot of children, you're going to be a homemaker. Sometimes you might be called a housewife. They're basically the same thing, but after years as a homemaker, she was inspired by the 1960s feminist movement to pursue her childhood dream. So yes, in the 1960s, there was the feminist movement. I believe that was referred to as the second wave of feminism.
Second wave, yeah.
The first one was earlier in the 20s or so to try to get the right to vote for women. And then in the 60s, that was along with the hippies and things like that. And third wave feminism is what we have now. But indeed, she was inspired by the feminist movement in the 60s to pursue her childhood dream. In other words, feminists were saying women don't have to be just housewives or homemakers. They can have careers. They can go to college and stuff like that. And she said, yeah, I want to do that too. My childhood dream was to become an illustrator or an author, so she began illustrating children's books and writing fiction.
Well, you could go to college back then, but usually you would graduate, and then once you got married, you would have your children and stay home to raise them. And then with this second wave, they were saying, no, we can have kids or not have kids and go out and work just like the men. So she decided to pursue her childhood dream, which was to illustrate children's books and to start writing fiction. So that's when she wrote Tuck Everlasting, 1975. This was in response to her youngest child's fears about dying. You know, kids have all sorts of fears. It sounds like her baby just, thought too much about dying for some reason. So she wrote this book, probably giving them hope that they didn't have to die, we could live forever. A major theme or idea in this novel, of course, is how mortality, and that's living our lives here. It's not living forever, but just living from birth to death, is a crucial or essential part of the life cycle. That's just how life works. We're born, we live, and we die. Some people live longer than others, and that's how life works. Now, Angus, remember, he's the dad, the husband of May, the patriarch. He discourages Winnie from telling anyone about the spring water. If you discourage someone from doing something, you kind of say, you don't want to do that. You make them kind of doubt their decision or make them lose some enthusiasm about doing something. I've had friends sometimes who discourage me from trying things that seem a little risky. I had a friend in New York who didn't understand that I wanted to perform. She thought it was too risky. She was a banker. She thought I should just have a 9-to-5 job. And she was always discouraging me from auditioning. Sometimes you need to ignore those people and go ahead and do what you want. Well, Angus was trying to help Winnie, though, by telling her, this spring water's not good. We've already experienced it. Let me tell you, you don't want to live forever. And so he discouraged Winnie from telling anyone about the spring water and keeping it a secret.
Right, and he longed to end his own immortality, which to a lot of young people might seem kind of strange. If you're young, you've got lots of energy and you've got lots of hope for the future, so you probably ask the question, why would anybody want to not live forever? Boy, I do want to live forever. Life is great, but of course, as you get older, you feel differently about these things. And Angus, of course, had lived forever, and he was probably pretty fed up with living. He was isolated and didn't have any friends. So, of course, he felt differently about immortality than other people would. So he discouraged Winnie from telling anybody about that spring water. Now, it's the certainty of eventual death and having connections with others that make life worth living. So this might be exactly why it's a good thing that life is finite, or why we die eventually and it's not infinite. It doesn't last forever. It's the certainty of eventual death. And certainty just refers to how certain something is, how for sure you know that something is going to happen. Okay, so sometimes, of course, if the weather forecast says the typhoon is coming, you might doubt the certainty of the forecast. Maybe the typhoon is going to veer away and it's going to go to the Philippines or Korea instead of Taiwan. So we're never quite sure of the certainty of weather forecasts. Sometimes they're right, sometimes they're wrong.
It's true. And eventual here is another vocabulary word. It means something that will happen eventually, right? I'm using that word to define it. It recurs at the end of something, maybe after a series of events, or at the final stage of something, at the ultimate stage, the end stage, eventual. The eventual death of everyone will always, all of us will die someday. It's something that's going to happen after we go through a series of events. And again, some will live longer than others. Some will die maybe from an accident or a disease or something, but we'll all eventually, and that's the adverb form of this word, die. So eventual is an adjective, and it just means something that occurs at the end of a series of events or the final stage of something. It's the ultimate that happens, the eventual death. We're going to talk more about this, guys, but first, we're going to take a quick break, listen to our Chinese teacher, and then we'll be back.
听众朋友大家好，我是安娜。我们从前天、昨天都在说这本好好看的小说哦，永远的狄家 Tuck Everlasting， 因为狄家一家人都 immortal， 都永远不会死。不过这到底是好事还是坏事啊？我们要来探讨一下这个小说的一些主题。当然我们要先介绍一下作者哦，在第一段就有提到这位作者 Natalie Babbitt。那小时候呢，他收到一本插画小说，然后他就想要成为艺术家嘛。在做了很多年的家庭主妇之后，他就受到1960年代女权运动的启发，就去追求他儿时的梦想咯。那所以他当时呢，就开始为儿童读物画插画啊，写小说。重点是他在1975年的时候就写了 Tuck Everlasting 这本小说，主要当时是希望能够回应他最小的小孩对一个死亡的恐惧。到底这个小说的主题是什么啊？第一个很重要的主题就是，其实死亡就是一个生命周期的很关键的部分，它就是一个 life cycle。所以 Tuck 的这个主人Angus 要阻止 Winnie 向任何人说出有关于泉水这件事情，而且还渴望结束自己长生不死。好，那所以这个是第一个主题，就是 immortality， 就是有关于长生不死跟 mortality 生命有限这件事情的一个主题。其实到底人为什么一定要死呢？或者是说人生到底为了什么而活着？人生的价值在哪里呢？至少在这本小说当中提到的是，人生其实最大的价值就是人都是会死的，生命有限，所以我们在有限的生活当中跟他人的往来，这种 connection 才会让我们的生命变得有价值。所以第二段的第三句其实点出一个重点，不过第三句它是一个强调句型，所以我们把第三句的 it is 框起来，跟后面有一个 that 也框起来，这是所谓的强调句型。它要强调什么呢？如果你把 it is 跟 that 都先遮掉，你会发现就是一个平铺直述的一个陈述句。 The certainty of eternal death and having connections with others make life worth living. 它就是一个陈述句，但是我们看不出重点。所以如果我们今天要强调的是，就是会死，而且跟别人可以有一些交往，有往来，这才是生命价值啊。我们要强调的是句子主词部分的话，就可以把主词放在 it is 跟 that 的中间。那么原本的句子剩下的 make life worth living 就直接照抄就可以了。当然这句话还有一个重点，就是倒数第二个字的 worth， 这形容词很特别哦，它指的是值得的，但是后面呢通常会加名词或者是动词 ing 表示值得某一件事情。
We're going to take a quick break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
All right, let's continue to talk about some of the ideas in this book, Tuck Everlasting. A main theme of the novel is the mortality, or is that mortality is a crucial part of living. We all know that we're going to die someday, so that, of course, affects how we approach life and how we appreciate our relations with others and things like that. And yes, indeed, it's the certainty that we know about the eventual reality of death, and also it helps us have better connections with other people, and those things are what make life worth living. And it seems that Angus understands this. He discourages Winnie from telling everybody about the spring water. Angus, remember, was envious of the man in the yellow suit when he died because he had lived so long. He thought, yeah, life is great, but at some point you have to die, and that's what I would like to do, and they can't. So he discouraged Winnie from having anything to do with the spring water. But the opposite happens here with Jesse. He urges Winnie to drink the spring water and thereby transform into an immortal being. So here, to urge someone to do something means that you tell them that they should do something because you think it's better to do that, and you're basically giving them some advice. You're giving them a kind of recommendation. So he recommends that Winnie drink the spring water. You should drink that water. It's a good thing because therefore, or thereby, you will transform into someone who gets to live forever. You will be an immortal being.
Yeah, if you urge someone, you do it very strongly. Oh, do it. You should do it. Do it. Yeah, go. Yeah, definitely do it. You're really very enthusiastic about it. You're positive about it. You do it strongly. And he urges her to drink because he's kind of lonely, right? And if she drinks it, she would thereby, or through this way, transform into an immortal being. Now, this shows that he doesn't care about Winnie's welfare. Not really. You know, he knows that being immortal isn't very fun. He just wants some company, though. He's not really concerned about this 10-year-old girl. She's the one that had the crush on him. He didn't have a crush on her.
Right, so he's got an ulterior motive here. Maybe he just wants somebody to keep him company or something like that. Maybe he's being insincere here, but he encourages her to drink the water. And if you encourage someone even more strongly, as Stephanie says, you urge them to do this, he really wants her to drink that water and as a result, or thereby, change into someone who can live forever. And this demonstrates, or this shows, that he doesn't care about Winnie's welfare. Basically, he only cares about himself and having someone with him as he lives forever. And he's had many years to mature and realize the harsh reality of being immortal, but he has the perspective of a selfish adolescent. So yes, he's lived for many years, but still he seems to be only 17 years old, so maybe he hasn't really learned a lot in his long life. He realizes, or he knows about the harsh reality of immortal life. If something's harsh, then it's severe, it's bad, and we often pair this word with harsh reality. Like, for example, after you finish college, you face up to the harsh reality of life that people are selfish and they're competitive and they'll do anything to defeat you. And indeed,
that you have to work and pay bills.
That too.
That's the harsh reality of life.
You have to go see the doctor about various problems you have. You have to fight for parking spaces. Your neighbors are making too much noise. Your wife wants to divorce you. Yeah, all these terrible things can happen. That's the harsh reality of life.
Yeah, that's often used as a phrase, the harsh realities of life, the plural form too. But he does have the viewpoint or perspective of a selfish teenager who typically only think about themselves. So instead of being stuck in an unnatural cycle, he is stuck outside of any cycle. He's not in anything that is familiar to most people, both mentally and physically. Physically, of course, just means having to do with your body, not just your mind. Mentally would be your mind. Emotionally would be your emotions, right? So the vulnerable boundary between right and wrong is another important theme. Yeah, some of these decisions that they make, you might look at it and go, wait, that's wrong. That's immoral. They shouldn't do that. But then you realize their motivation behind making that decision actually was one that was positive. They were trying to do the right thing, but the decision looks wrong. Here's an example. First, the Tucks commit the crime of kidnapping. Now, kidnapping is definitely immoral. It's wrong. Everybody would tell you that. But why did they kidnap her? Well, they were trying to protect her. And they knew that they just had to get her away from the spring and get her to a place where they could talk to her for a while to convince her that she didn't want anything to do with that spring water. But it included that action of kidnapping, which is definitely wrong.
Right, they wanted to impress upon her or they wanted to convince her about the fundamental importance of keeping their secret. Fundamental just means basic here. They just want her to understand the fundamentals of keeping this a secret, because if they spill the beans, if they let the cat out of the bag and let everybody know about this, it could have terrible consequences. Yeah. And second, the second moral question here in the book is that May kills the man in the yellow suit, which is murder. You're not supposed to kill people, but the action is justified to protect the world from a potentially dreadful outcome. We often hear this, it's not moral to kill somebody, but hey, if that person is trying to kill you or other people, then you're justified in killing that person. Yes, you killed another person, but you saved many other lives in the process.
Yeah, so you do something for a legitimate reason if it's justified. And if something's dreadful, it's awful. Dreadful. How dreadful. They used to use this word a lot, I would say, when she wrote this novel. Dreadful was kind of a popular word. We don't hear it so much, but we'll still read it. People will use it. Just means something that's really bad, causes a lot of suffering, maybe something that has a bad result or outcome. Here it's dreadful, extremely bad, serious. So last, Winnie knowingly helps release May from prison or the police custody. Remember, she's been kept overnight in prison. She's going to be executed the next day. Custody is someone who has, you would say they have care or protective care of somebody. They are guarding somebody. It's also used to talk about someone who has been imprisoned or put into prison, or the police have that person in custody. You'll also often see that he's in police custody, or the police took him into custody or police custody.
We hear about divorced parents also debating about custody. Who gets custody of the children after the divorce? The mother or the father, or maybe a little of both.
Who's caring for them? Yeah.
Exactly. So yes, she does get released from police custody, or they help her escape, and that's for the greater good, and she learns important important morality lessons about right and wrong by making difficult but wise decisions, which could include that decision to pour the water on the toad. Was she just getting rid of the water so that she wouldn't live forever herself, or was she helping the toad? We don't really know. Okay, that brings us to the end of our explanation for today. Let's listen now to the explanation of our Chinese teacher.
后来我们有提到，因为 Jessie 是希望 Winnie 能够喝下泉水，可是 Winnie 并没有喝下这一瓶泉水啊。那这一点显示 Jessie 其实并不是很关心 Winnie 的幸福，他其实还是一个青少年。虽然已经过了87年了，他可能变得成熟，但是他似乎一直都停留在青少年这样子的一个状态。也就是说，其实他没有被困在任何不自然的循环当中，而是无论在精神上还是身体上，他是被困在任何循环之外的。那当然这是第一个所谓的主题。第二个主题呢，则是到底什么是 right 对的，什么是 wrong 什么是错的呢？我们在故事当中有看到一些事情，基本上感觉应该是错的，可是好像又不是那么样的错，可能是对的哦。好，我们来看一下第3段第2句的地方。首先 Tuck 一家人他们 kidnap 绑架了 Winnie， 其实是为了要保护他，让他保守秘密，而且让他知道保守泉水这个秘密是真的很重要，因为万一有人知道的话，就会打破这个 life cycle。 好，那你说 kidnapping 如果去绑架别人是对的吗？不对啊。可是 Tuck 如果当时不掳走 Winnie 让他回家的话，这个秘密有可能会暴露出来。那到底是对还是错？这中间这个 boundary 这个界限其实是非常脆弱的。那故事也有提到另外一件事情，就是一个 murder 一个杀人案，因为 May 杀死了穿黄色西装的男子，这就杀人啊。可是在当时，如果 May 没有阻止黄色西装男子的行为的话， Winnie 有可能也会变成 Tuck 一家族一样，就是永远都不死了 immortal。 所以这个行为在当时好像也是对的，但是其实杀人就是不对啊。好，还有另外一个看似不对，但是其实可能是对的。我们知道 Winnie 后来蓄意帮助 May 从警方的拘留当中释放出来，但是这样子帮助一个杀人犯从警方的拘留释放出来，这是对的吗？可是在当时的情境之下，好像应该是对的，要不然 May 如果被公开的处决，那大家就又发现他是不死，那他到底怎么办呢？当然说了这3个这个事件呢，还是要回归到我们的这个句型文法。在第3段第3句当中，逗点之后看到一个 which， 这里是补充说明非限定用法的关系子句，但是 which 小心哦，它的先行词不是这个什么黄色西装，它的先行词是逗点前面的从 May 开始到 suit， 也就是 May 杀了黄色西装男子这件事情。那当然讲到这边呢，大家会觉得永远的迪迦啊，为什么可以一直这样畅销？其实是因为他探讨的主题真的是有很多值得讨论的空间。所以现在我也抛出一个问题，大家觉得 Winnie 把他手上这个泉水在 Toad 在这个蟾蜍上面撒上去，让蟾蜍变成永生的蟾蜍，大家觉得这是对的还是错的呢？我是安娜，我们下次见。
That's it, guys. We hope you enjoyed learning more about Tuck Everlasting. You might get a copy of this book and read it for yourself. I can see why Natalie wrote it for her child who was afraid of dying, because in this book, actually dying is a good thing, right? She writes it as if it's a wonderful thing to happen. It's part of nature. It's part of the natural life cycle. So we hope you get a copy and dig into this. I think you'd enjoy it. For English Digest, I'm Stephanie.
I'm Tom. Goodbye.
Bye.